Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm this week's discussion leader, and this week I am doing Chapter 3 from About Behaviorism by B.F. Skinner. Sorry, it took me a minute to project to the next slide. So, in Skinner's book, in Chapter 3, they first start with a discussion of some kinds of behavior that are called innate, which we often think of as being instinctive or instinctual behavior. The three types reviewed were reflexive/instinctive, respondent conditioning, and operant conditioning. So the way to think of reflexive behavior is it's something that happens automatically. For example, if you go to the doctor and they tap your knee with that little hammer and your leg is working perfectly, you'll have a reflex. Your leg will move. In this picture I put up here, an instinctive behavior is performed by birds, and that they know how to build a nest, and they know where to fix it and what to pick up and how to put that. No one taught them that. Respondent conditioning is a little more interesting. Respondent conditioning, or to me, a little newer concept, in that in the book, they talk about the example of a runner who's at the start of a race, like in this picture. And the race is not started yet. The runner's not putting out any extra energy or effort, but his heart or her heart will start beating fast. That's because your body knows, your mind knows, that in a few minutes you're going to need a burst of speed. So you have learned to respond with a rapid heartbeat at the start of a race. Operant conditioning means a voluntary behavior, but it is based on a survival or innate need to survive. One example would be growing food. People grow food or go hunting for food or go to the grocery store for their food because they've learned if they don't have food, then they don't eat. If they don't eat, they become hungry. And an even more basic example would be if you're hungry and you go to the refrigerator and you get a snack and your hunger goes away, you have learned to eat when you're hungry. But you could avoid eating, so it is a choice on whether you eat or not. So put in a memory tip, just because sometimes when we do these tests or you're trying to recall these things really quickly in a meeting or in a setting where you're presenting the information, to me, I thought of operation as a voluntary thing. You choose to do an operation. For example, an organization like Operation Homefront chooses their methodology and chooses the members. In another sense, if you ever had an operation performed by a doctor in a hospital, sometimes it doesn't feel voluntary. You feel like you need it to feel better, but actually you sign a permission form giving permission. In other words, you have chosen, and therefore you are volunteering to have an operation performed upon you. So I think of operant, operation, voluntary. Another memory tip is like respondent conditioning. Respondent is responding to a stimuli. So like starting a race makes your heart beat faster. You've learned that behavior will make, that you're going to run in a few minutes, and therefore you're going to be engaging in a behavior in a few minutes of running. So even before you start, your heart will speed up if you've learned that information. So respondent behavior is responding to a stimuli. Another section in Chapter 3, which is quite a bit of a mouthful, is intermingling of contingencies of survival and reinforcement. So that is a very fancy way to saying all these things are not separate phenomena in individuals and in organisms. They coexist, they intermingle. You need all of these things in the natural environment and in human life. One example in the animal environment is imprinting. Imprinting is an instinct. Baby ducklings imprint when they hatch from their shell, from their egg. But whom or what they imprint upon vary. They generally imprint upon their mother because their mother's the first thing they see. However, if you look in the picture on the left side, you'll see a ducklings following a lady. Apparently, these ducklings have imprinted upon her. So and somehow they followed their instinct to imprint, but it was based in their environment on what they saw first. Another example of this is imitation or herd instinct. For example, animals that live in a herd have learned or would learn when they're little to imitate the behavior of the herd when the herd starts running. Why is that? Well, what has happened is they have learned or have experienced that even though maybe they haven't had direct contact with a predator, in this example I'm showing it's a wolf, they have figured out that running is a good idea, because if everybody else is running, it might mean that I need to run too, because there's something behind me that could be in danger. So this instinct to imitate behavior, herd instinct, is definitely innate behavior in animals, and it also, or in organisms, and it also is somewhat learned, because you do observe that when you're a lone, when you're part of the herd. Another example is territoriality and aggression. Aggression and being territorial is fairly instinctive, because it is about the conservation of resources or the access to resources. Animals will protect their environment because they feel safe in it. Sometimes it's because they're fighting for or want to protect their source of food, their source of water, their source of mates. And they will engage in that behavior. It's somewhat instinctive. For example, these rams butting heads, it's instinctive to them to fight that way. But they also have doing it because they want to protect something or gain something. They may want to gain more territory. They may want to gain access to more resources. And the same applies with humans in the concept of warfare. Our territoriality and aggression is often manifested in warfare and combat by attempting to expand our resources or control over an area. Another example of this is that we all, at birth, for example, a baby at birth will cry, we vocalize, we make sounds. But as we develop, the sounds that we make and the sounds that we verbalize will depend upon the environmental reinforcement we get. In other words, if I'm growing up in Spain, I would learn the word hola as hello. If I'm growing up in England or the United States, I will learn hello is the word that says hello. So that reinforcement from the environment, being praised when you say hello the right way or bonjour the right way, that is unique to your environment, but the vocalization is an instinctual thing that you started when you were born. And then the final section, evolution of mind. It's a very interesting concept, because with behaviorism, the premise is that all organisms, including humans, behave in response to their environment. So therefore, what is this concept of consciousness? I think it's kind of interesting there. Well, Skinner has a quote that I included in here in the book. He says, for people, the idea of when we're referring to the idea of consciousness or the mind, what is evolved is an organism, meaning humans, part of which, the behavior of which has been tentatively explained by the concept of mind. So the concept of mind has been explained by behaviorists as part of response to the environment and stimuli. So here's our discussion questions, thought starters, I should say. Skinner talks about how operant and respondent conditioning develop. Before this class, how did you understand those terms? And has anything changed? Do you still understand them the same way you understood them before? Do you have a deeper understanding? And related to the last slide, do we agree with Skinner, or do you agree with Skinner, that the concept of our conscious mind is part of our evolution as organisms? Looking forward to a great discussion this week, and I hope everyone stays safe and enjoys their week. Thank you.